Gary, thank you so much for joining me today on Think Uncommon.
Very nice to be here.
Lovely. Thank you also for taking the opportunity to get in touch with me and ask me if I would present your amazing book and your amazing story on Think Uncommon. I'm always looking for guests. And one of the biggest things I notice with people who have this uncommon mindset is this belief in themselves and this courage, which obviously comes from the story that you've shared in your book. And we're going to talk to our guests about that today. What I wanted to do is to start off with something. You may or may not know that I read a lot of Stoicism, and I'm a heavy believer in the philosophy of the Stoics and how it makes our life a little better. Incidentally, today, the message is be ruthless to the things that don't matter. And I think that really encapsulates the story that you have taken the time to tell everybody, and I'm hoping that we will peel layers off today.
Yep.
Now, you are an international bestseller. You have written more than one book. In fact, if I get my list right here, we have Annie's Boy, which I have in my hand here. We have The Greatest Boxing Workouts, Volume 1 and Volume 2, and The Greatest Ever Boxing Champions.
Yeah, that's my latest one. Yeah, I just released.
How does it feel to be an international bestseller?
It feels pretty good. I'm very proud. I'm proud of what I've achieved. But it was just a journey. I was just another sort of chapter, another part of the journey for me. It was, it was just the sort of thing I wanted to do to see if I can get it done, because it was against all odds. And then it never gets easier. It never gets easier. But I'm proud of the way I've done it, because it was unique.
It absolutely was. And if I understand correctly, you got to interview some pretty impressive boxers.
I have. I've interviewed over 150 world champion boxers in their own backyards, in their own countries, in the gyms. Muhammad Ali. I spent quality time with Muhammad Ali, which is a real thrill for me. It was. The Muhammad Ali had a real aura. In life, you meet certain people that's got an aura, and Muhammad Ali had this aura. It's indescribable, but he was a special human being. And,
did he leave a lasting impression?
Oh, definitely. He inspired me. He inspired me to try and be great. Try and be great, of the best I can every day. Just certain things he said made me think a lot about life, his life. Are these things that you see on the TV? There's a lot of loneliness there, a lot of insecurities. You would never think that, but there is, because Muhammad Ali told me that he couldn't go down to the park to see the birds or the ducks in the water.
Right.
He says and when I met him, he walked in a circle of men, so he couldn't see anything. There was all these bodyguards. I think there was 8 bodyguards around him when I met him in Las Vegas, and it's no fame is no everything that it's made out to be.
No, I must admit I've seen that a lot lately, where for a long time people think they want to be a celebrity, and as soon as you hit celebrity status, then they start peeling back and saying, actually, that's not really what I want. I just wanted to be really good at what I did and get paid for it.
That's right.
Yeah. So given that, I mean, let's start there. How does a guy from Dundee, Scotland, that had this unbelievable upbringing, which we'll talk about soon, find himself in a position where he's walking into gyms and interviewing world champions?
Yeah, well, I was another journey. It was you had to, if you were going to do it, you were going to have to look the part. You were going to have to be. I lived like a boxer all my life, and I trained hard. I knew how to train very, very hard to get really in great shape, to even be accepted. But you were walking into gyms, you never knew anyone, and when you went into certain gyms, they'd just stop and stare at you. They would, until you got their respect. That was one of the hardest things. You had to go and spar with them. train alongside them. But once you've done that, and then you got the bit of their trust, then you made friendships and you moved on. But that was probably the hardest thing, getting the respect. So you had to do the hard yards with them, and then once you've done it, it was fine.
So would it be fair to say that you earned their respect through your character?
I earned it through my character. My character comes all the way back from I was a wee boy, since I was a kid, and that what's inside you. It's very important that you've got character. If you've got character, you'll do well in life. You've been through a few things that builds character. It gives you. I've always said that, and that gets you through life. I show that I've got commitment. You've got a dedication, but the tenacity, and that gets you through life.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something to be said for someone who can have that go again mentality. No matter what shows up, they just stand back up, fall down 5 times, get up 6. There's always more left in the tank.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something to be said for someone who can do that. And you know what? Typically the people that can do that build that muscle through resilience.
Yeah.
Now, anybody who has read this book will absolutely start to understand the journey that you've had. And thank you very much for the lovely inscription that you wrote in the front of that. We'll talk a little bit about that shortly. But what I really want to understand from you is not just what inspired you to write this book, because this must have been quite a journey going back to being a child when you were completely out of that environment. But can you share a moment with us of when you first realized that you weren't like the other kids around you? Whilst there were certain traits that were definitely environmental, throughout the book there are elements where it's very clear that you don't think like your friends.
No, well, my perspective to being different was, it was just, as I said, it was just something that was inside me. I had to be different. I never had a normal childhood. I was was like 5 years old, ongoing. I was very. There was certain events happened that was terrifying. It was a process that I had to go through. Before I wrote Annie's Boy, I processed it, and I put it in sort of increments at a time. I wrote it down on just pieces of paper, and I like chronologically through the years, certain events, the music, certain music songs was related to certain things that happened. So I done that, and then I went through historical things that happened, as in, like the space shuttle crash, Margaret Thatcher, the unions, the miners' strikes. These are sort of brought me back to the age I was, like 14, 13, 12, 10, and I wrote them all down. And then I wrote a list of things that I remember what my mum done for us. And then I also wrote down a list of bad things that I'd experienced and things that my dad had done to me and my mum. And that's how what the process was. I never went to school, so it's not that I'm not educated, but I was always very street smart, and I had to be for a young age. So I grew up very, very quickly. I didn't, when people were playing on their bikes or playing with their toys, I was going through hell. So I had to adapt to that situation. People used to say to me all the time, "You were so brave. You were so brave." And I used to say, even at an early age, I said, "I don't understand what you mean. I'm not brave. I'm just adapting. I just adapted because I had to. If I never adapted to it, then I would have really fell over. I'd probably ruined my life." But I always said that, and I said to my daughters and that, if anything bad happens to you in your life, do not let it ruin the rest of your life. It should make you stronger. And that's what I tell them all the time. And yeah, so
It's the nature of adaptation, right? Being able to look at the scenario that you're in and shift according to what's needed.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
There
absolutely.
wasn't any choice. There was a couple of choices, but I took the choice that I thought was the best for me and my mum.
Well, realistically, the book talks about an adapt or die type of mentality, right? Where
It was
you've needed to make decisions on the basis of not just your own safety, but the safety of your mother.
mhm.
You've grown up in an immensely impoverished environment around kids that really don't look like they have much endeavor to go anywhere or do much of anything. They have been institutionalized as such, and there's not much get up and go in that space. But you had a little bit extra to deal with. And while that sort of environment is, very heavily known for violent sort of situations within families, yours was especially bad. Your dad was definitely not a nice guy at all, violent to a T, to the extent where it's probably fair to say he couldn't control himself under any circumstances.
He was just a violent character, old man. He was very charismatic. My father. He was he he smiled through his eyes,
Mm,
and then when he flipped, you saw how scary he was through his eyes. Even before he uh, he done anything, you knew it was coming
you
because of
knew,
his
you could
eyes.
see the shift.
Yeah, you seen the shift in him. So he was up to no good. He was always you know ducking and diving, so to speak.
Yeah.
And yeah, I suppose that was his character, but he had that side of the character was one thing, but then he had the violent side of his character. And I always worried that for a long time that I had put him and me, which I did, which I did. But yeah, I always say to my mum, I don't want to be anything like him. But I was a real struggle. I was a real struggle, particularly around sort of bullies,
Mhm.
or God help anybody that tried to bully me or anybody in my family, because I just saw red. I just saw red. I just saw my father again, which
And you
was,
spent your younger years protecting your mother to the best of your ability, even as a young boy, right?
well, Joe. I wouldn't use the word protection. What it was with me was I was preservation. I wasn't really protection. I was only a kid,
Mm.
and in reality, I wasn't going to be able to protect anybody, but I was going to try. But the things that I'd done or I tried to do, I tried to get better. I tried to be stronger, but most of all, I tried to be stronger mentally, uh, and then the physical side came later. But I had to get mentally um, for self-preservation, and
Mm.
then yeah, that was really what it was. But I would never say I was a protector. My mum was pretty tough. I mean, my mum was like she was a
Well, you
very
tell the story about your mother swinging punches with a woman around a clothesline that one of the other neighbours decided was hers. You come around the corner and there's your mother having a full-on brawl with another woman, and you're sitting back watching it all happen, just waiting to see who's going to end up standing up.
I was that was quite common.
Mm.
I was quite common. There was a lot of unrest in Dundee, where we lived.
Yeah.
It was an industrial town that
Mhm.
had pretty much died, um, due to economics and Margaret Thatcher moving all the factories, closing them down, and a lot of people were just lost. A lot of people were lost. There was a lot of alcohol. There was not really drugs, no drugs, but there was a lot of alcohol. It was quite cheap, and then you had a lot of social, um, you know, a lot of unrest, a lot of unrest. There was gangs. They, it was just a bad time. It was a bad time. So there was a lot of angry people, right?
Mm.
Because they were all like never had the money. and they were struggling. They were going through their own battles. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that sort of environment either brings out the best in you or the worst in you, right?
it does. It does. But as I said, I had my sort of take on things were I want to be sort of better. I want to sort of be kind, um, and I suppose caring. I suppose, but you had to be, you had to toughen up. Mentally, I had to toughen up, and you say to yourself, you go through a lot of bad things that affects you.
Mhm.
But it was the thing that I used to say. I used to affect my mum, and that made me even more determined to say, well, we've got to get out of this hole, and when we do, because we will, uh, you just live with the mindset that things will always get better, but you've got to keep going. You've got to keep going strong, and we did that together.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a big understanding right now, a large understanding about the impact of environment on people. Your book talks about not really getting out of this town. You're stuck in this way of living, and there doesn't look like there's any end in sight. How did it work for you, given that your mum keeps going back to your dad and your dad is constantly violent, and you're obviously on this cycle of your mum trying to reconcile with your father? He's used his sparkly eyes and his sweet smile to lure her back in. She wants the family to be together, as pretty much every mother does. So
Yeah.
she's gone back and believed him and tried again. And then once again, the cycle repeats. How did you manage to decide for yourself that you were not going to repeat that cycle in your own family, which is something that commonly happens these days?
Yeah, well, as I said, I had to process everything that I went through. Um, I was totally confused. I was confused with what was going on. But my mum seemed to be, she was like mesmerised with him. Like some people just shouldn't be together, and that was the case with my mum and dad. Like they should have. She tried, but she kept going back to him, and it was just like he'd just turn up one day. The knock at the door, and he'd be standing at the door, and I'd be like, "Here we go again." But after a while, you kind of immune to this thing. You just sort of say to yourself, "Well, it's out of my hands. You can't do nothing about it." I
Yeah.
mean, you're 9 year old, you're 8 year old, you're a 6 year old, so you've not really got any say. You've just got to process it as it happens, if that's the right word, and then you just go with it. You just go with it, and then, but when the thing with me was, we see the fear. When I was terrified all the time. But when you've got fear, you've it happens to you. You go through a lot of bad stuff. Things happen to you, but the biggest thing is, I've been through fear loads of times in my life, but
Mm.
there's all sorts of fear. There's fear at anything, phobias. But when you've got a man that you think he loves you sitting across from you, and he's bending your fingers back pretty much as he can bend them back, and he's looking at you into your eyes, and you're looking at his eyes, and he's breaking your fingers until you basically go unconscious. That's a different kind of fear, because it's a fear when you think somebody loves you. So that's when you get that, and you get it again and again and again, and you see your mum, black and blue, dragged across the floor, beaten for somebody that's meant to love her. When you see that and you experience that, you it's a strange. There's confusion. There's um, just a feeling of dread all the time. But what happens after a while is that you don't think it's normal, because it's not normal. But what you think after a while is that it's just going to be part of your life. I actually grew up at a young age thinking, this is just part of my life. This is me. I'm involved in this. I wish it wasn't happening, but I've got to try and accept it. So you actually accept it. You know it's coming. You know it's going to happen, and you just try your best to try and get on with it. And you've just processed it. And once you hear that kind of fear, after a while, when later on in life, when things happen to you later on, because things happen to people, when things happen to you in life, you go automatically back in time. Well, I do. I go back in time. Like when I was doing my research for my book, Greatest Ever Boxing Champions, I was in a gym that was in the middle of the projects. So the housing commission, and it's pretty rough. I mean, it's very underprivileged, pretty rough, and there's a lot of drugs and prostitutes, and
the rules are different,
and murder.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bad things happening within that community, and it's been like that for decades. So the gym that I had to go to meet one of the boxers was in the middle of this project area, like the housing commission sort of thing. I came out after training with him, interviewed him, came out, and I had my training gear on, I had my beanie on, I had my boxing gear on, I had my boxing bag. I was surrounded, and I was walking up the road to get a taxi back to my hotel, and I got surrounded by about 11 guys from the hood. They were on a gang. They stopped me, they surrounded us, and they put one of them put a gun to the back of my head. I can still feel that was right there to the back of the head. And he was pressing on it. And he basically, this guy was very enthusiastic to blow my head off. And he made it quite clear that's what was his intentions. I remember, as soon as that happened, it's not that I accepted it, but I knew what was coming. And I thought I knew what was coming next, which was me being dead. But I accepted it, and I actually just I was at peace with it. And I said to the guy, look, I'm not here for anything else. I'm just here. I've just been to that gym down the road, and my heartbeat never got up. I never, I didn't miss a beat. I just got on with it. And that was purely because once you face fear by somebody that loves you, that there's other kinds of fear, but that fear wasn't near as scary as the guy had a gun to the back of my head, but it wasn't near as scary as sitting across from my dad when he was bending my fingers back to me being unconscious. It's probably quite strange to hear that, but that's true. That's just the way I am. And I've faced a couple of other things through at work situations. Like people say, stress. I'm stressing out. I never get stressed out because I've been through too much. It would take an awful lot to stress me out. Maybe something wrong with my kids. That would be probably the biggest thing for me, or my wife. But anything else, you just roll with it. You just go on with it.
What impact do you think that these experiences that you had as a child have had on you as an adult, being able to handle pretty much whatever comes your way and build resilience?
Well, as I said, what I went through as a child, that's made me pretty much resilient to anything. I mean, I don't think you can get much worse than what I've described before. And
why resilience, though? I mean, you could have gone either way.
I could have went either way, and a few of the times I had I could have took a left and I took a right on my road. I always wanted to be good, and I never wanted to be like my dad, but I did struggle with it a few times, just certain situations that happened with me. But I always wanted to be good. So you get people that have been through a lot of dare I say, trauma. Trauma for me is like what I went through. I didn't even know what that was. So, but they go through trauma and they turn the other way, and they actually sometimes they blame it on, say I get a mass murderer, you go and kill all these people, and he'll blame it on his mum and dad or what they done when he was a kid, or maybe that's in some cases, but I always think to myself, can't blame. Look what people go through. If everybody took that path, it's not the answer. For me, it's like a cop out. You know, they're trying to get a lesser sentence or whatever it is, but it's a cop out. I mean, if you want to be good, you'll be good. And that's what happened with me. I just wanted to be good. I knew I had a good heart, and I wanted to be kind and caring. But as I say, there is somewhat of my dad inside me, and that sort of, you had to keep a lid on it.
You can see the battle in the book with some of the phrases that you use. You can tell that you're on the edge and seeing snippets of your father in yourself, and then you pull yourself right back. You seem to have this accountability and this responsibility from a very, very young age that sometimes I don't see in grown adults. I'd be interested to get your interpretation and opinion on what you think you see out there with the work that you do at the moment in relation to accountability. There's a lot of talk about we are definitely lacking accountability, and we're looking as much as possible to get away with things and to reason our way out of things to minimize the impact. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Well, if are you talking about this generation or past generation? So this
Let's look at
generation.
Australia as a whole right now, just for the sake of it.
Okay, well, Australia as a whole, I love Australia. I'm very lucky. I came here. I've been very fortunate. I've been successful in my professional career. I love Australia. I love the people. But Australia is changing. Australia is changing as a nation. I see it. I've seen it because I've been here 39 years. It's in a great danger of losing its identity, its tradition, and its culture. But getting to if you're talking about people in general, the society we live in, it's actually it's a strange place for me looking in, because I'm so black and white. It's for me, there's a lot of people that, keyboard warriors. You've got they've not got any accountability. You've got kids being bullied online. There's no accountability for that. You've got people sending emails, walking past people in a corridor in an office, not talking to them or not saying what they want to say, and they'll go and send them an email. That kind of thing to me is really weak. I think that's really weak. The the world we live in, I think it's precious. If we live in this world in Australia, it's a precious place. And it should be nurtured, but there is a lot of weaker sort of generations. I think I mentioned before, Joe, the word trauma it gets thrown around very loosely.
Very
The A lot of people I hear, a lot of people use the term, it's okay, we'll just go and go to counselling. I think that's thrown around very loosely.
Mhm.
And the last thing I'd probably like to say is that people are awfully offended. They become really offended, and they tell people that so and so has offended me. That term is thrown around very loosely. And what it does for me, looking in, being so black and white, is that it dilutes the seriousness of these situations. It dilutes the people with trauma. It dilutes the people that do need counselling, that do need serious, to talk to people, and it dilutes the whole situation. And even all these an online thing, it's our society. It worries me. It concerns me really for the kids and the next generation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And there's common talk about those exact topics, right? About accountability and about how we've become so softened in relation to what we can withstand and what we can receive, that when we get told something that we don't like, we automatically find ourselves in a position where we need to defend ourselves, and the word offended becomes commonplace, or we get upset about the fact that somebody said something, even if it's just constructive criticism, and the person can't tolerate it. And we have issues in the corporate world because someone's tried to give someone feedback and the other person hasn't known how to receive it. So as a result of that, what's happened? We have an issue, and human resources are involved, and all sorts of things happen purely because people don't know how to take feedback. And
That's
instead of just listening to it for what it is constructively and then taking out of it what they need to, identifying that they do have gaps, being grateful for the fact that someone's courageous enough to bring it to their attention and doing something about it, they take the softer route, which is they said something that hurt my feelings.
yeah, yeah. Well, I was involved with like a high level. You know, I was looking after multi-billion-dollar projects with 2,000-3,000 men,
Mm-hmm.
and I had many. I think it was 120 odd supervisors reporting to me. Whenever there was, that means there was 126 headaches, you know, egos. But in amongst other, you had just the normal construction guy. Everybody's got their own problems in life, you know, whatever it may be. But the HR for the company I worked for, which is a global company, I was like number 2 in a global company. The HR, their answer to everything. Like I would go and say, look, Joe's his wife died, or Jimmy's daughter died, or Willie's having a nervous breakdown. Every single answer I got back, for whatever reason, about the working man was call Beyond Blue or call this number. That was their answer, and I could never get it. I could never understand the care factor. The duty of care was just gone in our society. You know, call this number. You know, it's just terrible.
Do you
But
think that we've lost connection with one another? And that's one of the reasons why these issues arise?
well, I think my experience. I mean, I hate to think like that, but my experience tells me that's the way it's going. That's the way it's heading. If we're not very careful, but you've got to have people talking to these corporate people that's got experience, that's got the scars, that you know, people that can tell these corporate people that the way things are, you know, it's good to be an open door policy. Don't close your door on your people. You've got to have an open door policy, and it's got to be much more than call this number, you know, or send them a counselling. And that's not an answer for everybody. But in their head, that's their, you know, shrugging it off, or just taking the easy road. And there's never an easy road, you know.
No.
People need help. They need help.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that, especially when we're talking about the older generation of men, you may know yourself that the suicide rates for men in Australia are exceptionally high for 65 years and over. In fact, they are the highest of any age bracket. And the biggest problem that's been identified in relation to that is, one, the men are single. And as a result of that, they have no partner in their lives and they struggle when they're on their own. They've got no community. And the second one is they feel helpless.
Yeah, well, so.
They're unwanted, they feel useless and helpless, and as a result, they come to the conclusion that they're better off not staying.
There's a lot of lost people. As I keep reverting back to the kids because that's what I see, but I'd say there's a lot of that going on just now. I mean, you know, it's no week to speak of this. You know, it's no. You've got to open up your. If somebody wants to have a cry, when I was doing these big projects, I had an open door policy. I would print off thousands of these values, and at the very bottom was, I've got an open door policy, and it's not any nonsense by me. You'll get black and white, but I'm there. I'm there for you. And if you've got that and people know that you care, they're and they've got someplace to talk to. It's it's a good thing. It can only be a good thing. But when you give somebody a number, a card, you know, call this number, you get some person for Philippines or something. I don't know. That's not good. That can't be good for society.
There's no care there. It's deflection. It's
And it's the same with things that happen in school. Like my daughters went to the school. There's that much bullying going on there. It's really scary, and I couldn't understand it. I could because in my generation, if somebody even tried to bully me, I just give them a whack in the nose, you know, and they would leave you
and
alone.
you did.
And I did, but that was just me. That was the whole generation. Because
Yeah.
and then these kind of people were held accountable, and it made them think twice. I'm not saying that you go about whacking people in the nose, but I'm just saying in those days it was much simpler. There wasn't any of that social media. Well, it's a serious thing. These kids are committing suicide. When my daughter was at the school, I'm sure there was 2 or 3 kids within our area that committed suicide for online bullying. It was absolutely heartbreaking.
Scary
And
stuff.
and
Right?
the schools, I think the schools do enough. Like, I would love to go around all the schools and talk to kids. You know, I, I know it'd be good value for it, but you're never going to get funded. You know, I would do it for free. I would actually do it for free, but they don't want it because it's, I think they take the easy road. You know, you don't want to offend anybody. If you got this qualification. The other thing about this generation as well that I've noticed, I've nothing against educated. As I said, I'm not an educated person to say, but I've got a lot of street smarts and knowledge. But nowadays, people, I've worked with, as I said, a lot of senior people that are maybe a bit younger than me. They've got degrees coming out of their ears, but they've no common sense. And most of them have been no people skills, educated twits. That's the way I see them. And I'm not being derogatory to anybody that's got degrees or masters and that. Good on them. But you need to have the experience and you can't be taught that. If you want to be a manager, you've got to go through the hard stuff. You've got to be able to experience. You've got to have the scars to actually be a good manager, because then you understand people. You understand how they work, because you've been there. You've came through the ranks and things like that. You've got guys. It's like in the army. You've got guys in the army. They go straight in the army as an officer. Now, I'm not sure that's the same these days, but it used to be, because one of my friends I went to school with, he went into the army straight into Belfast with all the troubles, when the troubles were.
Wow.
As like a 20-year-old kid. You're a kid when you're 20. And
You grew up awful quick doing that.
He went into the Belfast in Ireland as a 20-year-old, as an officer. How does that work? I just don't understand that. You're no developed enough, and he's not got any life skills. He's got, if you're going as an officer, that's dangerous. That's dangerous, and it's dangerous for the people that report to him.
Well, you're quite right that EQ is typically developed through experience, and that allows a person to demonstrate not just compassion, but empathy. And when a person has gone through difficult times in their lives or has been a part of difficult times with other people, it allows them to have insight into a situation that they may not otherwise have. You'll know it yourself that when you see someone that's had a similar upbringing to you, you feel an automatic affiliation. You're connected to that person because you understand each other's worlds.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a little bit trickier these days. It doesn't seem to be as pertinent as maybe it was when even I was a kid. I noticed the difference in society and the way that we connect with each other, the way we communicate with each other has significantly shifted. And more than ever, we seem to have this gap, and the gap seems to be widening.
It's widening. It seems to be widening. like as I said, when I talk to the kids in the gyms or whatever else, it's it's got to be authentic. You've got to be real. You've
But
got to.
tell us, Gary, about the work that you do with the kids and the charity.
Yeah, well, I'm actually when I retire, I'm going to go full on. If I could go full on now, I would do it. But what I do and what I'm going to do in the future is that I'm going to get totally involved with the underprivileged kids because I was one of them.
Mm.
I was in the housing commission. So I've got an affinity with them, and I understand. Not everything because I've got different situations, but a lot of these kids, they just want what everybody else wants. They want to believe in somebody, and they
Mm.
also want to believe in somebody to believe in them, and that's the gist of it. A lot of them have not got that. It's a shame. They've not got it. They think that there's no any opportunities for them. Yeah, I just try to teach them that you've got to have belief in yourself. You've got to have your own sort of self belief.
So how do you do that? How do you give a kid from an environment like the one that you came from, who is impoverished, who doesn't have much education, who's in an environment that is violent, where they're currently always in their sympathetic nervous system in fight or flight, and survival is the number one objective? How do you talk to a kid that's in that position and help them to then gather and grow self respect and also belief?
Right. So as I said, it starts with a conversation. So you when you first talk to the kids, they're all looking up here, there. Well, who's this guy? And that's the first step. You've got to have the conversation, and then you've got once you get their attention, you've got to have like a strong conversation on where they're going. What's happening in their life. You've got to be seen to be really genuinely care about them, which I am. And I always tell them that you're learning. Although I'd never went to school and I spent half the time. I missed so much of school.
Mm.
When I went to school, it was all like Chinese writing to me. It was just gobbledygook and I spent most of the time looking out the window. But learning is very like no education, but learning as you go. That's what I tell them. I say to them, look, you've got to have a certain amount of belief in that things are going to be better. Things are going to get better. Like you can never wake up in the morning and thinking you make a list of things that's going to be good for you in that day. Then you focus on yourself. You've got to love yourself. Like a lot of these kids hate themselves. They hate themselves, Joe. Um, you, and I tell them a few stories about what I went through. I just go through. They've got to show up. They've just got to show up in life. They're only here once, and other stuff that's going on in the background, it will get better. You've just got to fight, push through it. Any experiences you've got will make you resilient, will make you tougher, it'll make you stronger. But you've got to keep going. You can't let it define you. When I was growing up, I always tell them, I always say them, and it's no mind. I think I heard it on TV or something, but I think it's a good analogy. But I always say to them, look, see all these people they had like a PhD. I never had a PhD, but I had my own PhD. I had P for poor, I had H for hungry, and I had D for driven. I said, so that was my. I said, that should be yours. I said, make any bad situation, you make it. Don't let it define you. You keep going, and eventually things will get better. Things will keep, but you've got to keep going, and you've got to in your own dreams and your goals, and you just try and go for it. Going to university is not for everybody. Everybody want to be able to go to university, and it doesn't matter. I always tell them like my story, how I got up to number 2 in a global company. I got up there just with hard work, perseverance, persistence, um, dedication. All these things, all these words that you see people saying. That was me because I never had a choice, and I always say that to the kids, and they hear you, and they listen to you,
Mm.
and you really feel as if you made a difference. But it's not just that. It's okay. Words are words, but you've got to show them that you care and pay a bit of an input with them. Give them a cuddle. You know what I mean? It's really, they don't get that at home. They don't get the cuddles at home. They get hardship. When I was in America, I was at a training camp with Deontay Wilder, world champion, heavyweight world champion. After training, we went. He's funds. He's well off. He's got plenty of money, but he funds a gym for all the kids for the projects.
Mhm.
I was blown away. And we got there. It was freezing, Alabama, and these kids. It was snow. It was a stone, but it was icy. It was icy wind. It was freezing. I think it was -2, and there was about 10, 15, something like that, kids, and they were at different ages. And I was struck with this kid. There was a kid there, Joe. He was about maybe 7-year-old, 8-year-old, and we were getting changed. They were tumbling on mats and punching a bag, and just this kids being kids running about daft, shouting, screaming. And when we finished, they were all putting their shoes on, their winter, the coat and everything on. This kid had had a pair of adult cowboy boots. So he had a men's, probably like size 12 cowboy boots, and that was his shoes in this day and age, and in America. And I was really struck, and I said to the Deontay Wilder's manager, I says, what's going on? So he gets to the shop. He says, after training, we go to the shop. It's like a corner shop, remote. It's got barbed wire around it, big fence, locks on the door, and there's bullet holes and all that stuff. And we get to the shop, and he says, when you were a kid, Gary, if you went to the store or the corner shop, what would you buy? And I says, well, normally it'd be like a lolly, a sweetie or a lolly. He says, watch what they do. He says, it's the same every time. Every one of them they never went anywhere near lollies or sweets. They went to and got a tin of ham, like a Spam,
Yep.
or a small tin of tuna,
Mhm.
or a can of corn, and they brought it back and put it on the counter, and he paid for it. I was in tears. I was actually in tears to see this, and it still sort of gets me when I think of it. But the next day, I said to the guy, I went back with Deontay Wilder, and I says to him, I says, look, I want to give him some money. And he
Mhm.
goes, oh, you can't give him money. You know. He says, no, we're not doing that, Gary. He says, the parents, they're all junkies, the mums and dads are all junkies, they'll take the money. But what I did do, I went and bought each of them a pair of Nikes. And so at least I was leaving that city knowing that kid wouldn't have to wear the cowboy boots. So that was a big highlight for me in my life to be able to do that, and I was awfully proud of that. But I always still think of that wee boy, and I always think, my God, like what kind of a life, what kind of a start has he got? And you've got that here as well. No, it's bad, but when you go into some of these housing commission here in Australia, in Sydney, there's some poor souls, some really lost kids, and that's what I want to do. If I can make a difference to that, that's hopefully my path.
That's an important distinction, Gary, that poverty and environments that are unsafe or unstable for children don't just exist on the other side of the world. We are in a very lucky country and we have a lot to be grateful for. But there are still those sorts of environments very much alive and well, even in our city of Sydney here, not far from where you currently are. And it's very easy to walk past these situations and not think much of it because we're so used to being around affluence and comfort that it's almost too easy to ignore what's right behind a fence or a train line purely because you don't look up or you don't think about it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's a real thing. It's and this sort of, the $6 million is spent on fireworks. I mean, what spend four and put 2 million towards.
Two
I
towards
mean,
the
yeah,
kids.
it's an easy thing to say. I know it's a politics and they're going to make a lot of money back from it, but there's a lot of things that are misspent, and they're not I don't think they're putting enough back into the kids. Look at the PCYCs, like the community
Yeah.
community gyms, like community centres.
Yeah.
They're all closing down. Like they're closing down. They're not getting funding. I mean,
Mm,
that's a heartbeat to a community. Like most of the
absolutely.
PCYCs, that a lot of them are close to like the housing commission kids, underprivileged, and that's what it was for.
Strategically positioned for a reason.
That's what it was for. And they're closing down. I
Absolutely.
mean, that's crazy. That's crazy. That's the future. Like, these kids are the future.
Do you think that could have changed things for you if someone had have had your outlook on impoverished kids and maybe made a change even at Margaret Thatcher's level or at the community level, and even something as simple as being able to get in the lift and it not smelling of urine?
Well, that was. It's hard to sort of put that into words, but we actually had a lot of good sort of social workers that were in our local community centre.
Mhm.
We had couple of boxing gyms. So we had that. There is a lot of good people out there willing to do these things, but that's it's like a snapshot. It's like a bit of reprieve. It's a respite. So you go to these places and then you go there, you feel great. You know that people will care for you, which is
Mm.
great. But then you got to leave and then go back into it again. So it's escapism, and that's in my sort of generation, living and growing up in Dundee. There was a lot of that going on. There was a lot of escapism, and some people took they just wanted to escape for a while. If they took magic mushrooms or sniffing glue, or alcohol, they were escaping for a while because they were so broken. A lot of broken people. Yeah.
Yeah. So little to look forward to, and there's
Uh,
not many that would have had your attitude amongst all of that difficulty.
well, that generation were a resilient race because they had to be. As I said, it's people adapt accordingly. But yeah, you did get people that just gave up. You did get people, and I'm no person that would give up on anything. But
Mm.
yeah, there was, and the ones that did give up, and they had no way out, and they thought I wasn't going to get better. They just gave up on life, and they tried to take the fast track. It's like the standover guy that was.
So tell us about that. I'm really curious to hear that story. Obviously, I've read it in the book, and it's pretty much, it really demonstrates some very masculine qualities of such a young man.
Yeah, well, it's my mum. It was, I had a special bond with my mum. I mean, I think every son does, but mine was especially powerful. She meant everything to me, and I was growing up. I was always frightened in case she got cancer or she died. I was always sort of really in the back of my mind, and I worried about her a lot because she worked so hard. She never gave herself a break. And what happened was she got a chance to work in my auntie's pub. So my auntie pub closed down. She got moved, and my
Mhm.
mum followed her. So they were like a two-man, sort of two woman team behind the bar. And the pub that she was going to was pretty rough. I mean, it was pretty rough. They were all pretty rough, but this was especially rough. And it had a bad name. And there was a guy there. He was I want to be sort of, well, everybody thought he was some kind of a hard man, like he was a standover guy, and he had all these thugs that were surrounding him,
Mhm.
and they just used people. They used people up. They extorted what they could out of them. And I was really worried, like my mum was going to that area and to work. And anyway, things went on, and I thought, Mum, you shouldn't have hit work. I mean, you're getting on, but you don't need it. And she goes, I need the money, and which we did it probably. But we she came home one night and she said she was really weird. She was acting really strangely, and I always made her a cup of tea when she came in, and she just had this funny look that I'd seen before. I'd actually seen it, and it was always bad stuff when I saw that look. And I sort of probed her, and I said, "Something all right? What's wrong? What's upset you?" And she told me. She said she was getting extorted. They were jumping behind the bar, and they says that you work for me now. You don't work for the pub. You work for me, and anything we want, we're going to take, and all this kind of. And basically said they were going to hurt her if she never went along with it. And my mum's, she was pretty tough, and when I heard that, I went, "Oh, that must be bad." If my mum sort of like, she was scared,
Yeah.
and I made my mind up. I never told her. I gave her a cuddle. I said things will be okay, Mum. And I planned it. And I thought he's messed with the wrong sort of guy. There isn't anybody who's going to hurt my mum or even hear any sort of. She's had enough. She had enough of that. I didn't want it anymore. So once again, I saw red. I planned it, and me and my mum, without going into the story, because it's if you read the book, it'll make sense. But me and my mum had a knife at the side of our bed. The whole
You used to keep a Bowie knife in your pants.
I kept it in the back of my jeans for some time, just in case my dad came back. But I never used a knife on anybody else. I wasn't, as I said, I wasn't a violent. I had violence in me when I had to turn it on, but I wasn't a violent guy. I was easygoing. I went from being a timid, scared wee boy, very nervous, shaking all the time, peeing myself just with nerves, to getting stronger. But this was like years later. This was like many years later. We and this guy wasn't going to get away with it. I actually made my mind up I was going to kill him. I was going to kill him, and it was that bad. And I thought, by this stage, I'd already been talking about going to Australia. So I thought, oh no, I can't be going to Australia and something happens to my mum. I was really scared, and I thought I have to nip it in the bud. And I was going to kill him, depending on how things went, and I would have. But I planned that. I took my knife, got a taxi. I had in a sort of, they call them closes, so it was like it's like the entrance to a unit, but it's black. There's no lights on. So I held it. I was in the shadows, and I knew he was in the pub every night with his cronies, and I said, I'm going to get him when he comes out. So depending on how it went, but short story was he went to water. He wasn't as tough as what he made out, and I proved it. And I banged. I remember I banged his. I had the knife right under his chin, and it was a big knife, and it must have been pretty scary. He was scared, and then, as I said, my heartbeat never went up. I stayed exactly the same, and was quite calm. And I was hoping that he made a move. I gave him a chance to make a move because I actually wanted to kill him, because that was just my mindset. I'll get him out of here, and nobody's ever going to hurt my mum. He never. He fell. He felt that he collapsed, and I just banged his head on the fence. And I just says, next time I come back, it'll be a different story. Things improved greatly, thank God. And that was it. I went home, and my mum was waiting up for me, and she says it was dead funny because I'd had a few mates, a few friends that were quite troublesome, not bad. And the one guy in particular, she says, "Oh, you've not been with him. He'd get you into trouble." And I'm thinking, my God, if she really knew,
if you only knew what I've just
only knew that. But I mean, yeah, it's just something that I felt that I had to do. Uh, and as I said, I'm not proud of it, but it's just something that happened. And
I think what you've actually demonstrated, though, Gary, is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about the uncommon man. It's about a man that has a dangerous element inside of him, and he knows that it's there. He's not fearful of it, and he definitely doesn't shut it down, but he has control over it. So he knows that if he needs to go into protection mode, or if he's being threatened unexpectedly, something showing up in his field, he can switch it on like that. But in this current age at the moment, we're not teaching our kids, and we're definitely less and less teaching our men to have that element in them. In fact, we've softened them to the point where statistically men are more likely to actually cower as opposed to step in and protect like you did for your mom. And this is becoming an ongoing conversation that is happening nationally and globally around what's going on with our guys, that we've put ourselves in a position where once upon a time they go and offer to go out to war, thinking of Normandy, where the young men were actually lying about their age to go and protect their country and their soil. Now we've come to this position where the ultimate response is hide behind your telephone and record the event.
yeah,
It's a huge shift, right?
there's a massive shift there. Another story happened to me about maybe 6 weeks ago. I was going into the shopping centre, and I was there was a pedestrian crossing. Now, I always wait. I wait and I wait, and I make sure, and I look left, I look right, and I look left and right again, and I make sure it's clear. Then I'll go slowly. So I'm not one of these that sort of run the gauntlet and try and shut people off when they're trying to cross. So I'm sitting there, and this guy walks across, just a young guy, maybe in his 20s. He's walking across the pedestrian, and I'm just sitting there like that. And he must have thought I was going to make a move to go. And he turns around to the car, and he's getting at one of them, really aggressive. And then he gives me the finger. I hate that thing, giving the finger. I've just never liked that. I think it's really the most disrespectful thing, I think, anyway. Anyway, he's giving me the finger, 2 fingers, by the way, and in front of the car. And I'm just saying, okay, you're right. So anyway, I parked my car, and I walked in. He walked in that door. I walked in the other door. He's walking up this way. I walked inside the shopping centre, and I stopped him. And I says, "Hey mate," I said, "Do you remember me?" I says, "A couple of minutes ago." I says, "I just parked my car." He went, "No." I says, "Well, I remember you." I says, "I'm going to give you a word of advice. You're just a young kid." I says, "What are you, in your 20s?" I says, "You've got to be very careful moving through life with who you give the finger to and who you get really aggressive to. Because one of these days, you might be doing it to somebody that's had a really bad day." I says, "And you'll be in big trouble." I says, "Do you understand what I'm saying to you, mate?" I says, "You don't understand who's behind the wheel. You don't understand what people's background is." I says, "And you crossed the line." I says, "But one day, if you carry on like that," I says, "you're going to come a cropper." I says, I says, "And look at you now." I says, you're going to cry." I says, "You were going to cry." I says, "Okay, you can cry if you want." I says, "But I'm just giving you a word, a friendly bit of advice. Please stop doing that, because you're going to come a cropper, and you're not the man you think you are, you know." And I just walked off. But
Might have changed that kid's life.
that's the kind of things that is happening. As I said earlier on in the sort of podcast, the people are not got any accountability. Like, as you said, you've got people that are sending emails, hurtful emails, and not being held accountable for it, you know. And it's just wrong.
It's definitely good to know that there are still men like you out there, Gary, that will give someone a gentle tap on the shoulder and go, "Hey, heads up, just keep an eye out for that, mate, because it's not going to end well for you. Please just look after yourself and do this a little bit differently next time, because it might seem like fun and games in the midst of it, but it could end up very, very badly for you and could change your life for nothing."
It's
A
like
bit of stupidity.
yeah. No,
And it really only takes one decision to change someone's life, right?
bad decisions are made every
One
day.
bad decision.
One bad decision changes everything.
Let's talk about good decisions. Boxing for you. So one of the fundamental things whilst you were in Dundee that kept you out of trouble was going to the gym.
Yeah. So my situation was I wasn't all about the boxing. I was training. So I never had any father figure
Mm.
or good influences in my life for a male, for a man.
Mm.
So all my heroes were all people that was off the TV. And there was boxing on the TV. It was free to air. All my heroes were boxers or pretty much sportsmen, and I just wanted to be like them. There was a guy going around a decathlon called Daley Thompson. He was one
Mhm.
of the heroes. There was a judo guy called Brian Jacks. He was a hero of mine. And then I had a suite of boxers that I really loved: Marvin Hagler, Barry McGuigan, loads of them. There's too many to name. But my uncle was a boxer, and he knew that I was troubled. My uncle Joe, he was a big influence in my life. He was like a likable rogue. If that's Have you heard that term before? He
Yes,
was
I have.
a
I'm very
lovable rogue.
familiar with it.
He wasn't a likable. He was a lovable rogue. Everybody loved my uncle Joe.
Lovable rogue. Yeah.
Yeah, he was up to whatever he was up to. But to me, he was like, every time I saw him, he actually made me feel great. Like, just with things he said, he gave you a cuddle, a wee bit of a wrestle, like man stuff, macho kind of stuff. But he was really caring, and he kept me on a good path.
Mm.
And I never knew this, but he'd set up a kind of chance meeting, but it wasn't really a chance meeting. We had a guy that was heavily involved with the boxing in
Mhm.
Dundee and Scotland. He was pretty high up. He sort of wanted to check me out and see if I was going to be any good, or if I was sort of.
Yeah.
And he set us up in a club, which was my club. But my thing wasn't just the boxing; it was everything. I tried a bit of judo. Um, I wanted to do everything. I'd done loads of exercises. I like Bruce Lee. Everybody liked Bruce Lee in those days. But my thing was I took up an awful lot of running. I'd done a lot of road work, and I competed in a lot of marathons. I ran thousands of miles.
Mm.
Um, and a lot of the boxers, when you used to see the videotape on the shows, I was always running in the snow or running up hills, and I loved that. I really loved that, and I'd done that for a long time. But it was the discipline. But when you used to go to these, I joined a running club. Uh, it was camaraderie then when I was older, but before that, it was you went there and you felt good because you knew people were there for you. They were half of them were like had a half bottle in their pocket. They'd had a
Mhm.
swig of the whiskey, but you knew that they were there for you. They're there for the right reasons. I've got a huge thing with it even now. Um, like when I get nominated for the Boxing Hall of Fame, which I will in the coming years, I'm going to dedicate it to other people that are in the shadows boxing, the men and women that open the doors to the gyms every day without fail, rain, hail, shine, snow. And if it wasn't for them, they wouldn't have the club. That's how
Mhm.
support I'm passionate about the PCYCs. I mean, a lot of the people are voluntary, uh,
Yeah.
and I'll be voluntary as well. But that's the kind of thing that gave kids, it gave me, and I knew that people cared about us, and they also give you something to believe in. Other than yourself, you believe in yourself. Well, that's what you hope. But they give you a bit of a nudge. It's tough love. They give you tough love as well. Like pull your socks up. Snap out. Train harder.
Okay.
Be better. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Absolutely.
used to get that from Uncle Joel. You be better than your dad. You've got to be better than him. You can't. You are better than him now. You just keep going. So
Just keep.
you've got to have somebody that inspires you, haven't you?
I absolutely agree. It definitely helps to have someone that you look up to and you're inspired by, that you're aligned with their values and their characteristics are characteristics that you want to emulate. And you look at these people and you think, yeah, that's definitely who I want to become. And I must admit, I'm quite grateful for the fact that kids who don't have fathers can have heroes, because sometimes those heroes stand in place of absent fathers, and those boys especially who would otherwise miss out can have that feeling of connection. Even though it's a hero on TV or a movie or something like that, it's someone that they can aspire to be. And I've seen many young boys drag themselves out of situations like yours purely because they put heroes' pictures up on their walls and said, I want to be like him. And
Yeah.
they train for that. They teach themselves that. And they can drag themselves out of any horrendous environment and completely change their lives because they become ultra focused on, I want to be like him.
That was my story. That's what I done. When I met, as I said to you before, I've met like Muhammad Ali, the greatest ever. I've met loads, my heroes. When Joe, it's actually in my latest book, the Greatest Ever Boxing Champions. I've wrote a story about each of them. But see, when you meet them, sometimes it took me 2 and 3 goes because I got so emotional. Because it took me back to when I was 11-year-old again, or when I was 13-year-old.
You're a starstruck boy who gets to meet his hero that you never thought would happen.
I was like, something just says, that's surreal. How did I manage it? How am I sitting here? You know, he was my hero. Like he kept me going, and he would never knew it. And I used to tell him whenever I met him, I'd say, well, I met Marvin Hagler a few times. And I says to him, and he did not understand how much of an influence he was on me. He was a boxer, he was a world champion. But to me, he was much, much more. And when I told him, I says, you'll never get it. You know, Marvin, you'll never get it, how much you actually done for me.
Yeah.
You know, and you know the other thing as well, it seems dead funny because boxing people, they've got a thing with Rocky.
Yes.
So, Sylvester Stallone. So I've met a lot of people, but I've not met Sylvester Stallone. I'd like to meet him, but when I was like a kid, he was like, when I was out running, I'd put my beanie on, I'd take my coat on. I used to wear my mum's tights because I never had any like I used to wear that underneath, like because it was so cold. It's like, and that's what I used to wear for like layers. I'd go out running in the snow. I'd wait until it was a blizzard, and because Rocky done it, and then I'd run up the hill, and all I thought was, Rocky's done it. I'm going to manage this, and isn't that amazing? How you funny story as well. When I was in I was in a taxi with this lady. She was a taxi driver, and she said to me, she said, "Have what are you here for?" I said, "I'm here for the boxing." She says, "Have you ever met Rocky?" You know, and I spent the whole journey telling her that Rocky was just a movie. You know, she actually thought he was a boxer. She thought he was a real boxer, and I'm saying it was. No.
And of course, we know the story behind Sylvester Stallone's screenplay and how he got offered money for that, and he refused. And he said, only if I'm the star, only if I'm the star. And that first movie was, of course, constructed on such a tiny budget. And then the audiences loved it. And before you know it, you've got this series of, I think it was 5 or 6 movies. And then you've got the spin-off Creed to keep it going. And Rocky becomes a legend.
Yeah, well, he was, I was going to say that, Rocky, even now, like as a 60-year-old man, he's still an influence on me. I wrote the screenplay for Annie's Boy, and it's in Hollywood at the moment. So, like, whether it comes at anything, but the point being, when I wrote that screenplay, I thought, he done it. Sylvester Stallone done it, you know, and I think my story is good enough.
So who should play you then?
Oh, I don't know.
Who should play young Gary?
I don't know. I wouldn't know. But
what's the name of the boy that played in Adolescence, that Netflix series? He could be good.
He was good, eh? That was a good show.
He could be good.
That was a good show. But as I said, who knows? But I always say to my daughters, I might be dead, but you might, your movie might come out soon. But
make a movie.
You never know. You could. But the point being is, I wrote the screenplay, and that was very difficult. Like, that's not a thing nobody taught me.
You know what I like, Gary? I like that you remind me of David Goggins.
Right, really?
You remind me of David because David has spoken at length about how much difficulty he has learning things and doing things, but he still does it. And here you are, a guy who basically threw school away because you had the mentality that your mum had given you: work hard, get a job, make money. And so you went straight for that life as quickly as you possibly could to help your family, to do what was required as part of the family unit. And you've come out to Australia, gotten this opportunity as a 20-something man, taken it, left your mother, even though you felt immensely responsible to protect her. She let you go. You moved, came all the way across the oceans to us. And you're now sitting here telling me you've got best-selling books, you've got a screenplay in Hollywood, and on top of that, you've met all of these amazingly famous world champion boxers. And before we wrap up, I'd just really like to hear one single thing from you, which is, if anyone's listening to this, to the listeners that are hearing this, whether it's when this goes live or whether it's in 10 years' time, what's the one piece of advice that you would like to give them that was absolutely essential for you to endure everything that you did and to turn your life around from something that looked like you were going to be a statistic into the success that you are today?
Good question. Look, my take on life has been, you live, you've got to live, you've got to live, and you've got to learn. I've always, and it sounds sort of funny, but I've always had this ability in myself, what I feel, and I've sort of used what's you've always got to use what's inside you. So, and when if you're under some trauma, or you just got to sort of harness that. What I've always done, I've always, it sounds really strange, but people say it's nuts, but I'm not. I've got all these windows, so in my mind, but I can see them. So in my mind, I can see it now. I've got all these windows through my life, the good and the bad, and I draw on that. Whenever I'm going, we'll say, if I'm going to be going and doing a massive job, construction, a lot of organisation, a lot of pressure, a lot of at stake. I will always prepare. Like, I'll always prepare. I will sit down and I will plan it in my head before I get to the boardroom. I will plan everything. I take things. I go in my mind's eye. I'll go to these windows, and I'll look in the window, and I'll go through certain things, and I'll take the good out the bad, and you know what I mean, and I'll learn from it, and I'll take that and I'll write it down, and I'll say, right, I remember we done that 15 years ago, and there was a few things, I think life, it's all about learning. It's lessons learned, isn't it? I think that, and that would be my advice for anybody. It's you've got to live your life, and you've got to learn. If you don't learn, you don't go any place. Learning doesn't mean you go to, as I said, university, and you get degrees and masters and things like that. For me, that's no learning. For me, that's like a means to an end to get a better job or a high-flying job or whatever it is. But when you're learning, you're learning. I learn for everybody. I learn for the good. I learn for the bad. When I'm at work, I learn for the kids. I learn for the old timers. But the most thing you learn for the bad, and you never forget the bad, and you take that and you make good of it. And that's my sort of thing right through my life.
So no matter what the situation, there's always something to learn and apply, and don't get stuck.
That's right. Yeah. Just keep going. You got. You're only here for a short time, and you're a long time in the ground.
The Shaolin say that everything is impermanent, and what you've just told me, the story you've just shared, is a classic example of that. So, thank you so much for your time today. For anyone who hasn't already read Annie's Boy, please get it. I'll have the link in the podcast so you can have a look at it. It is a very easy read, but I will caution you that it is heart wrenching. You see Gary the hero, you see Gary the child, and you see Gary the kid that's just trying to get by as he goes through life in Scotland in a time that was immensely tumultuous. And I'm pleased to see that you made it to Australia, to our great southern land, and that you've decided to stay here and build a family here. So thank you so much for your time today, Gary. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing Annie's Boy on the screen.
Thank you very much, Joe. It's been really great talking to you. Thanks very much for the opportunity as well.
No worries.
Wish you all the best.
Thank you. And for everybody else that's watching, you can like and subscribe to Think Uncommon. Just hit the button below. We're looking to put out 50 episodes in 2026. A big ask. So if you think that you have an uncommon story, you are a man that would like to share it, please feel free to let me know in the comments, and I will send you an application form, and you can come here and tell your story about how you think uncommon.